Hi everyone, welcome to We Learn Legal. If you're watching this video, please make a note that this video is a part of the video series or the playlist series that we have for the legal reasoning, wherein हम सारे legal reasoning को CLAT exam के लिए एक पूरे comprehensive manner में scratch से cover कर रहे हैं, covering all your doubts. So if you're watching this for the first time, do make sure कि आपने इसके पहले की videos को cover किया है. Link आपको नीचे मिल जाएगा पूरी playlist का. And if not, if you're coming in continuity, then start watching this video.
Hello students and welcome to the next lecture of Law of Torts in which we'll be studying about the vicarious liability. I know ये नाम थोड़ा अजीब सा लगता है, vicarious का मतलब क्या ही होता होगा, but ये बहुत ही अच्छा concept है and बहुत ही important concept है of Law of Torts, okay? So we'll learn about vicarious liability in today's class and we'll also see कि कौन-कौन सी situations में एक vicarious liability arise होती है. So before we begin, I hope that you watched the previous class and the previous video and you understood what is the meaning of liability. So I'll just give you a brush up once again. Liability simply means that if A does any act, now whatever, and because of that act, let's say B suffered some kind of harm, right? Now, because of this act, whatever responsibility or whatever answerability arises from the side of A will be called as his liability. Okay. And by vicarious liability, we mean when one person A is responsible not for his acts, of course for his he will be, but he's also responsible for the acts of another person, let's say B, or it could be any other person C, or anyone for that matter. So अब खुद सोचो कि यहाँ पे हो सकता है कि मैं अपने ही एक्ट्स के लिए नहीं, मैं दूसरे किसी इंसान के एक्ट्स के लिए भी वाइकेरियसली लायबल हूँ. सो ऐसी क्या सिचुएशन होती होगी कि मैं सिर्फ अपने लिए नहीं दूसरे लोगों के काम और या फिर उनसे हुई हुई गलतियों के लिए भी मैं जिम्मेदार ठहरी जाऊं, राइट? सो दैट ऑल इन ऑल इज कंसिडर्ड टू बी एज वाइकेरियस लायबिलिटी. बट हम इसको थोड़ा डिटेल में समझने की कोशिश करते हैं कि वो एक्चुअल में होता क्या है. सो द फर्स्ट पॉइंट सेज दैट इट इज बेस्ड ऑन द प्रिंसिपल. कौन सा प्रिंसिपल है पे बेस्ड है? दिस इज कॉल्ड एज रिस्पोंडेंट सुपीरियर, व्हिच मींस लेट द मास्टर आंसर. So let's say that whoever, let's say in this situation A was the master, okay, and B was somebody, just take an example, was a servant who was acting or who was working for this particular master. So इस principle के according ये माना जाता है कि चाहे B से ही कोई गलती क्यों ना हुई हो, we will consider this master A to be answerable to the world. Okay, this is on the this is in Latin basically, and the principle is respondent superior, which means let the master answer. Secondly, it says that an individual or entity is held responsible for the tortious acts. I told you what tortious is. If you've not watched it, please do it in the previous, go and watch the previous recording. You will understand what tortious is. And if अगर कोई ऐसा भी tort commit करता है, so कोई एक individual responsible होगा even if this tortious act was committed by another person. This is how vicarious liability works. So just taking an example, if A does some act, he is liable, right? Now this is his tortious liability generally, okay? But if there is particular relationship between A and B, so this A will also be responsible vicariously for the acts of B, okay? So you have to understand it like this, all right? So just give me a moment, I'll just clear this up. Okay. So thirdly, it says that this principle holds that the employer is responsible for the actions of his employees or agents who are acting within the scope of their employment or agency. Now, this बच्चों is very, very, very important that जब किसी भी employer के employee या उसके agent से गलती हो, जिसके लिए हम employer को as in जो हमारा owner है या employer है या master है, उसको अगर हम वाइकेरियसली लायबल ठहराना चाहते हैं तो उसके एम्प्लॉय ने वो गलती विद इन द स्कोप ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट की होनी चाहिए. लेट मी गिव यू एन एग्जांपल दैट ए हैड अ ट्रांसपोर्ट बिजनेस, ओके. नाउ ही हैड बी हु वाज अ ड्राइवर. सो ए ने बी को बोला कि भाई तुम जो है मेरा ट्रक जो है ये ड्राइव करके इस XYZ जगह पे, लेट्स से कि तुमको ये ट्रक ड्राइव करके हिमाचल लेके जाना है, ठीक है. अब उस बीच क्या होता है कि ये जो बी था ये अपने ट्रक को, जो ड्राइवर होता है उसको ट्रक को ऐसे ही छोड़ के चला जाता है, ना हैंड ब्रेक लगाता है ना कुछ भी लगाता है. और इस सिचुएशन में एक और गाड़ी थी जो रोड के किनारे पार्क थी, वो ट्रक जाके उसमें लग जाता है एंड इट कॉजेज अ लॉट ऑफ हार्म टू दिस पर्सन ऑल्सो एंड दिस कार ऑल्सो, राइट? So even though this mistake was done by the driver, okay, but since he was working and he was under the employment contract of A, who was the transporter, okay, the owner of the transport company, so for this act also, this driver, no, but the employer will be vicariously responsible. But we have to make sure कि जब ये गलती हुई तो उस वक्त वो अपने employer का दिया हुआ काम ही कर रहा था. He was doing the work that was given to him by the employer and not beyond that. Give an example, like he had already reached Himachal. Now he had to return the next day. So he thought that okay, अभी रात तो बची हुई है, and some private person comes and says कि मेरे goods कुछ deliver होने हैं, आप कर दो तो मैं आपको 1,000 रुपए दे दूंगा. Now this work was not given by his employer, right? अब अगर यहाँ पे कोई problem होती है, so this employer A will not be responsible, okay? So this is very important that this person should be acting within the scope of the employment. And lastly, this principle is important as it provides a means of holding an employer accountable for the acts of his or her employees who may cause harm to others. Because ultimately, we have to make sure that if this person C suffered the harm, so he should be compensated for the harm caused to him, and thus we can hold the employer accountable for the same, right? Now, next we will be studying about that vicarious liability arises in which all kinds of relationships. So देखो, बहुत सारे relationships होते हैं, types of relationships होते हैं, friends होते हैं, family होते हैं, teacher और student का होता है, like बहुत सारे relationships हैं, right? But सब में सबको vicariously liable नहीं रखा जा सकता. So there are some kinds of relationships जिनमें vicarious liability arise होती है. The first and the most common one is the relationship that is between an employer and an employee. I hope कि आप employer और employee का difference समझते हो. बच्चों, जो नौकरी पे रखता है ना, वो employer होता है, ठीक है? जैसे कि अगर किसी को कुछ मिला तो वो फाइंडर होगा. तो जब भी ईआर होता है, मोस्टली वो इंसान होता है जो उसके एक्ट में है, एज इन जिसके कंट्रोल में चीजें हैं, ठीक है? और एम्प्लॉय वो होता है जिसको वो नौकरी पे रखता है, ठीक है? सो इस पे कंफ्यूज मत होना, ओके? सो एम्प्लॉयर एंड एम्प्लॉय रिलेशनशिप जो होता है, उस केस में डेफिनेटली वाइकेरियस लाइबिलिटी अराइज होती है. पीछे हमने जो एग्जांपल ट्रक वाला पढ़ा, आप उससे समझ सकते हो. नाउ there is one important concept that is a case of a borrowed employee. Now what happens in a borrowed employee, that if A had a gardener, okay, so ये एम्प्लॉयर था और ये उसका एम्प्लॉय था. अब क्या हुआ कि A का कोई फ्रेंड था जो जिसका नाम था रमेश, ठीक है? नाउ दिस रमेश कम्स एंड विजिट्स एज गार्डन, और उसको गार्डन्स बड़े पसंद आते हैं, ठीक है? तो वो कहता है कि यार सैटरडे संडे आप मुझको भी भेज देना, मतलब इसको अपने गार्डनर को प्लीज मेरे वहां पे भेज देना, मुझे थोड़ा काम करवाना है. सो दिस गार्डनर who was अभी तक an employee of A now becomes a borrowed employee of Ramesh, right? So in this case अगर ये कोई गड़बड़ करता है, कोई प्रॉब्लम करता है, किसी को नुकसान पहुंचाता है, तब कौन रिस्पॉन्सिबल होगा? So in this case, बच्चों, there is this important test which is called as the hire and fire test. So all in all, what we have to see is that who actually hired that person and who still holds the power to fire that person. Okay. So if at all it was still A, then A will only be responsible. In detail, इसको आप live classes में cover करना. I will give you more and good examples so that we can cover this in detail also. Okay. Now secondly, the relationship between a principal and agent. देखो बच्चों, ये स्कूल प्रिंसिपल नहीं है, ठीक है? ये प्रिंसिपल होता है जैसे कोई भी एक कंपनी है, लेट्स से, ठीक है? सो उसका कोई एक ऐसा एम्प्लॉय जो उसका प्रिंसिपल एजेंट है. प्रिंसिपल एजेंट मतलब लेट्स से कि उसको 50 लाख की सेल्स करने का टारगेट है, ठीक है? अब ये जो प्रिंसिपल है, ये अपने अंडर कई सारे एजेंट्स को हायर करता है जो डोर टू डोर जाके सेल्स करते हैं, राइट? सो इसने अपनी ड्यूटीज को क्या किया, उसने सिंपली अपनी ड्यूटीज को डेलीगेट कर दिया, राइट? नाउ इन दिस केस, this person is a principal. The people who hires for doing his job are the agents, right? So they also have a relationship in which the principal will be vicariously liable. Giving you an example, let's say that this principal said to his agent that you have to say, make a sale of books going door to door. But what this agent does, that instead of selling the books, he goes and sells drugs to people. In this case, principal will be surely liable for the wrongdoing of the agent. Okay. So here, this you have to see that even in the principal-agent relationship, the principal will be vicariously liable for the wrong acts of his agents. Okay. Thirdly, पार्टनरशिप रिलेशनशिप, जैसा नाम वैसा काम, ठीक है? तो जब कोई लोग पार्टनर्स होते हैं, लाइक 2 or more पार्टनर्स, So if even any one of them does anything wrong, and if all are partners in that particular firm or company also, and even they did not do anything wrong, लेकिन उस एक के गलत करने पे भी जो compensation है या फिर जो accountability या answerability है, it will be for all the partners, okay? So each partner can be held vicariously liable for the tortious acts committed by their fellow partners, okay? So this is very important. Now next is वेरी कॉमन, इंडिया में तो ये बहुत होता है, पेरेंट चाइल्ड रिलेशनशिप. आपने बहुत बार सुना होगा, जैसे यू कैन सी इन द पिक्चर. लेट्स से देयर इज अ चाइल्ड हु इज लेस देन 18 इयर्स ऑफ एज, राइट? सो इस बच्चे ने गाड़ी निकाली और वो उसने जाके किसी और की कार में चोट लगा दी और उनकी कार को नुकसान हो गया. नाउ इन दिस केस, बिकॉज दिस चाइल्ड इज अ जुवेनाइल, वो एक बच्चा है, छोटा है, 18 साल से कम है, मेजर नहीं है, राइट? अभी मेच्योर नहीं हुआ है. इन दिस केस his parents will be liable for the wrongdoing of the child. इसका एक बहुत ही solid example है. अभी recently आपने सुना होगा about the Porsche case of Pune, in which that boy, he had hit and killed two people because of his rash driving. So his father was also arrested. So that is actual case of vicarious liability that comes on a parent because of any wrongdoing of his children. Okay. Now, last one is independent directors. Here you have to make sure बच्चों that यहाँ पे independent directors or independent contractors are not vicariously liable. So let's say that there was some person, an employer, he had some employees, but he also went to hire some independent contractors for getting some work done. Now, in this case, this contractor does something wrong. So because he is a contractor who is independent in nature, तो एम्प्लॉयर का बहुत ज्यादा इंटरफेरेंस नहीं था इन हिज जॉब डूइंग. सो ऐसे केस में इस एम्प्लॉयर को हम वाइकेरियसली लायबल नहीं ठहराएंगे, एंड दिस इंडिपेंडेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्टर विल हिमसेल्फ बी वाइकेरियसली लायबल. ओके, so this is important, and always keep this in mind that independent contractors will not, they will be themselves responsible, and the employer over there in that case will not be liable vicariously for the wrongdoing of the independent contractors. Okay, so this was all for today's class. I hope you understood this, and good luck to you.
So I hope that you liked the video and आपके जो भी concepts थे वो clear हो गए हैं. If you have any doubts regarding this topic, then you can join me in the WhatsApp group. The link is there in the description box below. मैं खुद personally सारे doubts को clear करती हूँ, so you can get in touch with me through this WhatsApp group. To watch another video of the same series, you can just click on the end card, or simply you can find it right below this video. Good luck, aspirants.